by millions of people. I think I get to do these things because of skill, but not in the way that you might think. In my life, I've collected a set of skills that turn out to be uniquely suited to specifically the kind of problem solving that I love to do. Although I'm an expert at none of my skills, each one behaves like an arrow in my quiver that I can point and shoot at a specific problem. You know the adage that when all you have is a hammer, everything begins to look like a nail? I absolutely love the fact that whenever I learn a new skill, it literally changes the entire way that I look at the world, from a forest of nails to completely infinitely variable landscape. For every reason that matters, I like working under pressure, without enough information, and against the clock. I don't mind having to get it right most of the time, and I don't mind being wrong a goodly portion of the time. I like finding elegant solutions because there's no time for anything else. The work is tiring, amazing, deeply satisfying, confusing, and ever-changing. I've made a lot of choices in my life, and while many were a seat of the pants, many were deeply contemplated. Some were made with advice from friends, some from advice from books, some good, some very bad. But along the way in examining the good decisions that I've made, I've come up with a few nuggets and I'd like to pass them on to you guys. Think about the big picture. Don't specialize so much that you don't understand how things fit together. Don't concentrate only on what's in front of you. Seek to understand how what you're doing fits into everything else. There's a lovely Greek word which has fallen out of usage called polymath. And it means having learned much. And it's synonymous. Its synonyms have lost much credibility over the last couple of hundred years. Synonyms like Renaissance man or jack of all trades, which many people say jack of all trades, master of none. I would point you to the entire phrase is actually jack of all trades, master of none, though often better than a master of one. Early on when we were doing Mythbusters and we needed expert advice on something like, say, pneumatic tanks, we'd call a pneumatic tank technician because their entire knowledge set was regarding only the tanks that they could fix, that they sold and that they worked with, not pressure vessels in general. I'm sorry. There we go. There we go. We would need advice on something like pneumatic tanks, and we call a pneumatic tank technician because their entire knowledge set was about the tanks they sold, not specifically pressure vessels in general or laws of compressed gases or material stress, and we'd hit a dead end with them. And this would happen all the time. We, and by we I mean the whole Mythbusters team, Jamie, me, our producers, our directors, our researchers, we've learned to look for the person that knows not just about their field, about the what of their field, but about the why of their field. These people tend to be at the top of their field. They often own the company. They often have other pursuits. They have well-fed brains, and they also have excellent senses of humor. Truly cross-disciplinary people. They have the whole world at their disposal, and they are hungry every day for more knowledge. The world needs more polymaths. Put as many arrows into your quivers as you possibly can. You can always fit more. I am still finding them every single day. Right now, I'm annoying many of my friends and my family with card tricks. The more you know about as many things as you can, the better you will be at whatever it is you're doing. Steve Martin wrote an autobiography a few years ago where someone told him as he was starting out, they said, eventually you will utilize everything you ever knew. And he said that they were right, and I have found in the course of doing Mythbusters that is absolutely true. Remember that in 5 years, you will think totally differently about everything. You have no idea how many changes will occur to you in the next 5 years. You literally cannot conceive of it. So don't try. Be willing to have your mind changed. Be honest when you don't know something, because that's when you learn. Prepare to be wrong. You will be wrong most of the time. If you keep score. It doesn't really matter. This has the advantage of making you more realistic and better prepared in the workplace and in life. Remember that the future is unimaginable, and all you can do is prepare yourself as best you can. Take yourself with a grain of salt. My father in the 1960s was a television art director when nobody really knew what the heck that was. was. And he was very successful. In fact, he was one of the people that helped set the entire aesthetic style of 60s television advertising. And somewhere in the mid-60s, he partnered up with a well-established producer. And the producer said, okay, we're going to form this partnership. Lee, my dad's name was Lee. We're going to form this partnership. We're going to put out a lot of press about you. We're going to get a lot of buzz going about you. And I got to say, the moment you start to believe your own bullcrap, I'm going to cut you loose. And it's like a family adage in my family. People will say a lot of bull about you. Don't believe any of it. It's okay for other people to believe it, but just don't fall for it yourself. Be nice to everyone. Again, it's pretty simple, but I have hired people in the past who years later had the opportunity and ability to hire me. I've also worked for people who years later I had the ability to hire. I cannot think of a better argument to be nice and reasonable with every single person you meet and you deal with throughout your life. Be prepared to change directions. Nothing says idiot to me like someone who refuses to see the truth of a situation because they become emotionally invested in the idea that they have set upon. Again, this is similar to admitting you're wrong. If what you're doing isn't working, stop forcing the square peg into the round hole and get on building a round peg. A craftsman doesn't always work linearly without making mistakes to a perfect project. In fact, that's the last thing a craftsman does. A craftsman makes all the same mistakes you and I do. He can just see them coming from a much longer way away and is not attached to being right. Don't ever be afraid to stop what you're doing and start again from scratch. Most of the time in my experience, it's faster to build something twice than to engage in what we in the special effects industry gently call turd polishing. Try everything, read everything. You will be the best at doing the thing that you love. It may find you years to discover exactly what that might be, and you may change the thing that you love. I am still learning. When you're stuck, choose a path, any path. I learned this from an interesting lesson when I was making a sculpture years ago. I was working on this arm. I built this big robotic arm, and I really liked the form of it. I painted it with primer gray. And I knew I wanted to paint it a color, but I didn't know which color. And so I thought, I really can't decide. I can't see a color in my mind that it should be. So I decided to paint it the opposite of what I thought any reasonable person would paint it. I painted this huge mechanical arm, candy stripe, red and white, all the way up. It took about 6 hours of masking taping and painting and carefully laying it out to take off all the masking tape and realize that the paint job was completely wrong. But at that point, now I saw this thing that was wrong, I knew the path to push it in. And I consider this really a great adage in my own life. I've used it in relationships, I've used it in building things, that if I don't know the path, pushing down one path will often tell me what path to go in. Don't fear failure and be honest about it. We say it on the show, failure is always an option, and we're making a joke. We're making a joke about the way most people think about science. They think science is, people in white lab coats going, that's just the way I expected it to work out. Any working scientist will tell you that perhaps the only saving grace of Mythbusters is not our methodologies or our painfully tiny data sets, but it is in the fact that we demonstrate that science is a very messy and creative occupation, that you can spend weeks going down one path only realizing that you're asking the wrong question. I don't trust people who haven't failed or who won't admit that they've failed. I have tried a lot of things in my life, from starting an artist-supported cooperative in Manhattan, to opening a gallery, to musical theater, from writing for magazines, rock climbing, and in many of those things I've encountered failures big and small. I've had business partnerships and commensurate friendships go south, way south. I've been divorced. I've taken jobs for lots of money that I couldn't complete. I've trusted people who've stolen from me. There's a point in the middle of a real debacle where we feel at our worst, our absolute worst. We feel awful, we feel beaten, and worst of all, we feel stupid. But there's also a point right after that when we start again, a little bit wiser. No matter how much you've screwed up, you can always take this moment to alter your behavior and to move forward. Failure